we'll do at some point in time this week. It seems to me, Skip, that maybe he had a little bit too much to drink. He got into a car accident. Maybe he bumped his head, because the one thing that his wife said is that this is not the man that I know. He was not acting like himself. And so for me, it's really hard for me to speak on something like this without knowing more facts than what I already know. But this is what we do know. This seems to be alcohol was involved. It seems to be a situation where he had an accident in his car was damaged, and maybe he set out on foot and he went to a situation and some people felt unsafe. And knowing the Richard Sherman that they know better than Shannon Sharpe is that he's acting strangely. This is not the guy we know. Let's get him some help. And the police showed up. It was cordial at first, and then things went sideways. It was reported that they had to bring the K-9s out. He had a small laceration on his ankle. And so, Skip, I really don't know. It's just a bad look for Sherm. He is vice president of the Players Association. Yep. He's a stalwart in the NFL. He's been a model citizen. That's what I can say about Richard Sherman. He's been a model citizen. You might not like some of the antics. You might not like some of the things that he says, but there's a method to his madness, and he's been a great ambassador for the National Football League. And I'm disappointed that this has happened to him. But hopefully we'll get some understanding. We'll get better clarity to what transpired. But his wife did say no one was injured. The kids weren't injured. I wasn't injured. But like I said, this is out of character from the Richard Sherman that I know. Now, I don't know him as well as his family members, but they said this didn't seem like the man they knew. So if it doesn't seem like the man they knew, it damn sure isn't the man that I know.
Okay, so I hear and respect everything you just said about a Richard Sherman. I don't know. I did have, as most people know, a run-in with him on air long ago in my days at ESPN. I think it was, if memory serves, 2014. But I don't know Richard the way you know him. But I will give you what you said. He's been a model citizen as far as character goes, as far as off the field goes.
Yes.
I don't know anything else that's happened, except I did read carefully a very complex, deep piece written by the Seattle Times that ran today. And it did say that up in Seattle, the King County Sheriff's Office obtained an extreme risk protection order against Richard Sherman earlier this year to bar him from possessing firearms, according to court records. The petition was sealed by a Superior Court judge, so details are unknown. So that was the first indication that anything had happened previous to what happened 2 nights ago.
Right.
Okay, so now what do I know from the Seattle Times story that I didn't know? And these are all from the point of view of the police. This is what they've released so far.
Okay.
That a woman who identified herself as Sherman's wife called 911, King County Sheriff's Office, on Tuesday night, told the dispatcher that Sherman had been drinking and had threatened to kill himself. So this is earlier that evening. And then the next thing we know is that 911 gets a call from a construction worker who reported that there had been a possibly impaired driver had driven into a closed construction zone on eastbound Highway 520 in a Seattle suburb and had done lots of damage to his car. And I'm assuming that was Richard because the plates registered to Richard Sherman. And
Correct.
The car was so damaged that it became a hit-and-run situation, not that he hit and ran off of hitting a human. He just did a lot of damage to the construction site and obviously Correct. To his car, and he made it a short distance, and the car completely failed. It said one of the wheels came completely off the car, and the right side of the car was severely damaged. So we also know that in the first 911 call, the woman saying she was his wife warned that he was on his way to her parents' house. I don't know whether their children were at the parents' house. I'm not sure about that. But the next call comes from that house, and it was said to be burglary because he's just trying to knock the front door down, and he's doing heavy damage to the front door.
Right.
So all this fell under domestic violence because it was her parents' residence.
Right.
But there was no domestic violence per se involved because she said, as she said in a statement to the Seattle Times, I want everybody to know nobody got hurt.
Right.
Okay, so it wasn't your basic domestic violence. Nobody was threatened or hurt inside the home except that he was trying to knock the door down.
Right.
So now the police arrive off another 911 call from inside the house, the parents' house.
Correct.
And as you stated, the police actually decided to try to undercut it a little bit, to take a little of the urgency out of it by parking several blocks away and walking to the residence.
Correct.
And they engaged in conversation that they said was cordial with Richard in the, I assume, in the front yard.
Correct.
And they went back and forth, and it was all up and up, cordial, until they said, Mr.
Rich,
Sherman, we're sorry, but we have to take you in. And obviously, Richard did not love that, and whether he was impaired or not, we're not sure about his blood level because they did blood test him, and we'll get the results, I assume, later today when he has to go before the judge. But the point was that at that point, he decided, I don't want any part of this, and began to walk away, and then escalated, I guess, into sort of a trot or a run. And as you pointed out, they had to go canine. They let the dog go apprehend him. And the dog clamped down on Richard's lower leg and I guess bit in far enough that they had to take him to the hospital to get that wound treated, but the dog restrained him from moving any further.
Right.
And it also says in the story that another officer got involved trying to handcuff Richard and got hurt. I'm not sure how, but that he was injured.
Right.
So, again, we have resisting arrest as a possible charge, and we have the crash in the construction site as a possible charge. Nothing, we don't know yet where this is going to head. And then we have the attempted quote-unquote burglary, just trying to knock the front door down as a possible charge. So don't know. We'll hear more this afternoon from the judge. Will he be charged? Will he be freed on bail? I assume he'd be free on bail for sure.
Correct. Yes.
But now, to your point, he is the vice president of the Players Association, but at 33, I think it's fair to say he's on the downside of his career. He's been a great player. He's got a potential to be a Hall of Famer. Is that fair to say? I haven't really thought hard about it, but I'd say he's got a chance. And yet, I thought he had a chance to hook on one more time with one more team. It sounded like the Seahawks were not interested. Obviously, he had been publicly opposed to some extent to the current quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm not sure how that would have played in the locker room. So maybe they were a little hesitant to go there now with Richard. Is it a chance that Kyle Shannon would have brought him back for one last hurrah in San Francisco? Maybe. And I was already pushing, as you know, Shannon, I thought he'd be a good fit with my Dallas Cowboys.
Correct.
And I'm sure there are jokes out there now as we speak that he'd be a great fit now that he's got some police blotter, right? Because that's what Cowboys do. But the point was, Dan Quinn was his coach in Seattle.
Yes.
Cowboys have a young secondary, and I thought Richard could be, you know, a player coach. He'd be great in the meetings, and I think he could have helped them to a certain extent on the field. I don't have any idea whether they were ready to go in that direction or not, but now all of that is put on hold at the worst possible time for Richard because now we have to see what the NFL sorts out.
Right.
Is he going to be disciplined for any or all of this? I don't know, but it's got potential that he's going to be disciplined, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does, Skip. And you know, when the potential of alcohol is involved and emotions are high, logic is low.
Yeah.
I think if logic should have said that Richard should have behaved in a manner, and sometimes, Skip, you know how it gets. You know, when people are trying to talk to you and the potential of alcohol is involved, you're not trying to hear what anybody has to say. You're not logical. You're not thinking clearly. So clearly for me, for him to be involved in a situation like this, you know, for his wife to call and to send out a sign of distress that he's threatened to kill himself. There are some things that, you know, and that's what, you know, a lot of you, Skip, you hear a lot of these, like, mental health experts, when calls like this come out, mental health experts needs to be with the police officers because they're not trained to handle people that are suicidal.
Yeah.
Or the caller has said he's threatened to harm himself.
Yeah.
So you need to get someone with them that's trained in that field to talk to a Richard Sherman. Not saying the police shouldn't be involved,
Yeah.
but the police should not be the first
Yeah.
to engage said individual. I just hope this thing, I don't know where it goes from here, Skip.